You start.
I don't want to. Wait, maybe I do want to.
Mm-hmm. What do you want to say right now?
I want to say, welcome to day 8.
Could you please give us your name?
Ghislaine Maxwell.
Could you please?
Ghislaine Maxwell.
Could you please give us your name?
Ghislaine Maxwell. Ghislaine Maxwell.
Does that work?
Absolutely. You're wonderful. Wonderful.
You just messed up saying absolutely.
Yeah, I don't listen, lady.
You just almost used the B word.
Yeah, beautiful lady.
Oh my God.
Yes, welcome. And I'm about to use another B word.
I saw it like almost coming out.
I listen, I'm about to use another B word right now. And this is a B word that actually a lot of people like to hear. My name is Brace.
I'm Liz. Hello, everyone.
The L word.
Yes, the L. No.
And we're joined by producer Young Chomsky here, and we are the TrueAnon word. Word up. Remember when people said that? No, that's not working for you. You're going to
It's
retire
not.
that one right
I don't
this
think
moment,
that.
young
I
lady.
think that's awful.
That's the first
Can we
and last appearance of Liz
delete-
saying that on
delete that, please?
Nope. That is overruled and vetoed. Welcome to day 8 of the I'm about to say the trial of TrueAnon, although TrueAnon has faced its trials and tribulations during this, most notably being Liz's arrest for felony, well, I'm not going to say what it is, but felony mild endangerment.
Yeah, you almost said felony murder, which just really is taking the joke too far.
Just a lie that you were saying.
Okay, wait, before we start, a couple things I want to mention.
Some errata.
That is, I don't know, I find it interesting. I don't know, maybe some folks at home, as the radio people say, will also find it interesting. But Ghislaine Maxwell, day 8, finally emerges in color.
Uh-huh.
Much like Brace Belden, she wore a red top today. Although hers was still a sweater, a knit.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this is the first time we've seen Ghislaine with a pop of color.
Yeah, she was looking very festive. Yeah.
Yeah,
well, she was
much like yourself.
Her Christmas, well, it's her Christmas too, considering she is Protestant. Her birthday's coming up, which is on Christmas.
Yes.
Which, by the way, no Jew would be born that day. Just want to make that clear. She is Protestant. But her birthday's coming up, so it could be like a little hint at that.
Yeah.
Maybe don't forget to give me some presents.
Yeah, I don't think it looks great on her.
Nothing has so far.
Yeah. Another little tidbit of information for my foodies out there.
Hello? Pardon?
The chef at Café Lorenzo has quit. Now...
He's come to work for me in my home.
Now...
I've given him a sinecure.
This caused great distress.
Yeah.
For a little bit of time until people figured out or remembered that they don't really care much for Café Lorenzo.
The food is notably tough to digest.
Yeah. Here's hoping that there's a labor shortage out there, so not entirely sure. Perhaps Lorenzo himself will make an appearance. But until that point, I promise I won't update you with who's working there. I'm sure no one cares.
Every day during the trial,
I care.
I have been bringing an array of 8 pot pies with me. And I lay them all out on the grand banquet table down in Café Lorenzo, and I stick one finger in each so they won't be shared by any interlopers. And then I slowly, starting at the edge of the crust, drag my Jabba the Hutt-like tongue, not because of our shared corpulence, but because of our shared tongue similarities. That's why I'm making the comparison around the rim of the pot pie, slowly dissolving it with the acids that I emit until I reach the center, and then I slurp it all up as it has become sort of a slurry-like substance in one sip.
I feel like, now I don't know which pot pies you bring, but I feel like quail is one of them.
Quail pot pie?
And
veal pot pie? Sparrow pot pie?
What about mincemeat?
Mince and sweet meat. Let's start. All right. So we're gonna. If you're just tuning in, that is our he's got a third. Well, actually, he takes up about 4 or 5
Yeah.
mics. But that's our special guest, the gourmand. Speaking of some other errata having to do with the Maxwell family, Isabelle Maxwell.
Yes.
Who, by the way, wandering around like a blind crow
Banshee.
every day.
Just
yeah,
like
it's
through the halls of federal court.
Every time I go into the Southern District of New York courthouse, I'm like, did I buy a mansion or did I inherit one from a uncle I never spoke to?
Absolutely.
Because there is a scary ghost running around these halls.
An Edwardian, baroness.
Yeah. And she refuses to respond to anyone's cat calls or whistles, which is actually true. She won't make comments. And today, friend of the pod, Marlon Edinger, cornered her in an elevator, not in a Me Too type situation. I know what you're thinking, and started asking her questions. She said she refused to even acknowledge him. And then, of course, being the urbane sophisticate that he is, remembers that both she speaks French and he himself speaks that pedophilic tongue. And so he asked her, he introduced himself, and then she said, I won't be commenting in French. So if you want to get to her, start speaking another language because you'll spook her.
Wow.
He spooked her so badly that instead of getting off at her floor to go to the courtroom, she actually got off on our floor and wandered into the overflow room and stood around again like some sort of the last sparrow that Mao was trying to catch,
haunting the halls.
She's just this hunched figure in a beret and a vest. I winked at her. I meant to mention this to you earlier, but I gave her a wink.
You and Marlon got different tactics there.
One, and no response from her.
Yeah, you got a wink in French. That's why.
Yeah, that's both eyes.
That's a Me Too, by the way.
Anyways, that was so there was also just strange vibes this morning in the courtroom. One of the overflow rooms had some sound issues, so there was a lot of Q people at first in the morning, and then there's some followers, I believe, of a mommy blogger who is Instagramming this.
Yes, so there is an Instagram influencer that is from Los Angeles who's here for the trial. And I don't mean like Epstein Q influencer. I mean like an Instagram like mommy blogger influencer lifestyle person. She has like 480,000 Instagram followers.
And 480,000 plus one because I accidentally followed her from the podcast
you did?
Instagram account instead of my own one. Yeah, my bad.
Great. Can you unfollow?
I did.
Okay.
I sent her a couple winks, but yeah.
Anyway, she I guess she Instagrammed that she was coming to the trial and has been posting like insane, always stories too. You know how those types that post like 1,000 stories? I found out that it's called caterpillaring.
What?
Yeah, because it's got all the dots at the top. They call it caterpillaring.
Huh.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
I don't know any of these terms. Anyway, so she's been posting and it's like, oh, I'm inside. Like, I'm going to go in. She paid line people because she's a fucking Instagram girl. She's not.
Yeah. I should start getting paid for being a line guy and then just taking the spot.
Oh, great move.
Yeah.
Great move. Yeah. The old switcheroo.
Because it's, we didn't sign a contract. But yeah.
Tricked ya.
But so a bunch of her acolytes have been rolling up, right?
Yeah. So there's like a bunch of, I don't know how else to say this, but like Kendall Jenner ass looking Instagram girls who flew out from LA and are like trying to hang out with this Instagram influencer, but then sitting in the overflow room because they don't have lines, like they can't get in the courtroom.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like a very weird dynamic.
People should understand that trials are boring for the most part.
Yes, they are.
Like, I mean, there are, of course, occasionally.
I think it's interesting, actually.
I do, too.
Even the boring stuff I find interesting.
Me too, but that's because, I mean, we know who most of the people are.
Yeah, we've been following this
and like
time.
I can follow it pretty well. But like, if you're coming into this and not really knowing who like Juan Alessi is or like what the importance of, I don't know, Visosky talking about how him not seeing any girls in anything like that, it's like, I could imagine you'd be pretty bored.
Yeah.
During great swaths of this.
Especially if you're not like, I don't know if you're not like taking detailed notes because you have to do something later. I don't know. It just seems like it's not very riveting television for sure.
Yeah. And also Marshall watch again. A new one this time, fell asleep again.
Oh, but then we had a hard ass Marshall in the afternoon. He yelled
was
at
just
me.
the lunch break guy. Yeah. He was yelling
I
at
was
everybody.
like, bro, chill. You don't know
The
the
guy yelled
drill.
at him back, which I was, wow.
Yeah.
Anyways, today was a sort of flurry of witnesses making their appearance in the morning, mostly just really to corroborate the victims here. One, to corroborate, there's sort of a long back and forth between the prosecution, the defense, and the judge. I think before actually the jury even came in. The jury was, one member of the juror was very late today. And it was a train problem, I guess.
Classic New York story. And so the trial didn't really get going Only
until
in
about
New York,
10
baby.
a.m. Yeah, and so the only place with trains that people actually ride a lot. I guess there's a couple
not
other
true.
cities, but not that many of them.
Yeah, they've all been hawked off to private equity.
I purchased most of DC's train lines. But no, so the trial didn't actually get going until about 10 a.m., with the jury in the room and, witnesses being called to the stand and all that. And so there was a lot of time for prosecution, defense to sort of have it out in front of the judge, including about some documents, whether they could include them, whether they were proof that Virginia Roberts at the time, now, of course, Virginia Jeffrey, actually ever worked at Mar-a-Lago, by proving them with a certain document, insurance documents, I believe, of her father. They brought in, I believe, a woman who was a property manager at Mar-a-Lago. She just was somebody who could corroborate whether Virginia worked there or not. She was in and out. I mean, the main witness this morning was Sean, who was, we talked about.
Carolyn's boyfriend.
Yes.
At the time.
Ex-boyfriend.
Yes. Ex-boyfriend.
And
he's the one, just to remind people, Carolyn says that he's the one who she was dating and she met Virginia who introduced her to Epstein.
Yes. So Sean was friends with Virginia Roberts. He actually apparently went to Survivors Charter School with her.
Wait,
Virginia.
Survivors?
Yes. Survivors Charter School.
Wait, who's naming a school Survivors?
What? Listen, you know me.
Just general survivors?
I'm one of the foremost charter school activists in the west and east of the Mississippi. No idea. This one had nothing to do with it.
And she is a survivor.
Yes. It's
Dude,
very weird.
I don't like that.
So Sean was friends with her. He was a bit older than Carolyn. Like I mentioned, he was 17 and she was 14, or I think she was actually 13 when they started dating.
Dude, what?
I don't know, man. I knew a ton of people.
Kids
like that
need to not do that.
Listen, when I was in high school, I had a girlfriend who was not in high school. She would come pick me up from high school in her car, and then we'd go. Yeah,
you told me about
apartment.
that. I don't know about that.
I knew about it.
I didn't date anyone in high school.
Well, I did.
I was a dork.
I was not cool, but I went to an alternative school. I went to, you know how there's gifted kids? Imagine if they were like, you actually have been given the gift of severe learning disabilities and or a lengthy criminal record, so you can't go to the regular public school anymore. That was the one I went to.
Okay.
But an illiteracy rate so high that the Cubans wouldn't have been able to conquer it had they taken it over. But so yeah, she went to high school with Virginia Roberts went to high school with Sean. They were friends, sort of, Carolyn gets brought into the friends group. And, like we detailed yesterday, in our testimony, Virginia brings her over to Jeffrey Epstein's house. And we actually got a lot of really clear, direct corroboration of Carolyn's story from Sean. That was like, to the point where like he was basically using the same, not the same exact language as her, but it was I mean, I'm no lawyer, but I couldn't have dreamed for a better corroborating witness. He basically said the same exact things that she did in terms of her age, in terms of, coming out with money, in terms of like how many times she went over there. I mean, it was like all the timeline stuff matched up. It was good. So like he mentioned, or like Carolyn mentioned yesterday, he would actually get calls because he had a cell phone. Well, sort of one that he shared with Carolyn. He would actually get calls from Epstein and I believe Sarah Kellen and Ghislaine Maxwell asking for and scheduling appointments for Carolyn to come over. I also brought another girl over there. I mean, his is really part and parcel with those like original Florida stories that like brought a lot of people into this, right? This sort of like extended network of very young people kind of like going over there with one another, the boyfriend sitting outside, really dark stuff. But he talked about having a kid with her, going away. It was extremely concise and clear, corroborating testimony from him. Obviously, the prosecution once again sort of tried to preempt the defense by bringing up his own struggles with addiction and the law. He got arrested in Louisiana for felony meth possession, which rang a little ding in my head because guess who got arrested in San Francisco for felony meth possession? Although San Francisco, I got into drug court, so it was easy. But he got arrested for also having a gun at one point, did 3 years in prison until I think August of 2020. Oof. Might have the month wrong on that, but pretty recently.
Yeah.
Says he doesn't talk to Carolyn really at all. Has basically no relationship with her. But he came out and he gave really like solid, clear testimony.
Good for him.
Yeah, very Sons of Anarchy type character. But after that, they had a woman who basically not house sat, but managed his house while he was gone in Palm Beach. So she wasn't there, Nicole Hess. She wasn't there when he would be there, but would go over and like let in gardeners and stuff, and basically corroborated a lot of Juan Alessi's testimony and just generally added more like strength to a lot of the testimony that's appeared so far about the house.
The next guy we heard from, and then actually the last guy, because my God, the cross-examination of this guy took about 2 hours. At one point, too, Alice and Nathan kind of made a little bit of a joke at his expense where he was like, "Oh, I didn't realize how late it was," and she was like, "I mean, it feels later."
Yeah.
I was like, "Ooh."
Yes, this took, I would say, this felt longer than 2 hours. I think this actually took.
Yeah, it took all afternoon.
Yeah, all afternoon. This was the bulk of the day. Today was a bit of a slog, I think, in the afternoon.
Yeah, so it's David Rogers who. We heard from Larry Vysotsky on one of the first days, who was Epstein's pilot / co-pilot. And this is David Rogers, his co-pilot / his pilot. I don't totally understand how this worked, but they were like, tag teaming the planes.
Yes.
That sounds wrong.
Yes.
In this context. But so they're a little duo that both worked for Epstein. But at some point, one was a pilot and one was a co-pilot. And then halfway through their tenure with Epstein, they switch roles.
Yes.
Which I'm just, again, if we had public question hour, I would be like, what's up with that? Why'd you guys switch?
Yeah.
Just,
good question.
General interest.
Well, we did find out that David Rogers is actually the one. So you remember that mystery we were talking about is actually where did Larry come from? Like how is he recommended to Epstein?
Yeah.
So Larry Vysotsky actually came to Epstein through according to David Rogers, through David Rogers. David Rogers himself came to Epstein via The Limited. So Leslie Wexner's giant corporation, Leslie Wexner, the man that, Epstein worked for, had power of attorney for, his company, the Flight Department, according to David Rogers, which is probably a more official name for that he did not say, is the one that recommended Rogers for the position, and then Rogers got Vysotsky on board. However, they had both worked together at a real estate firm. Glincher, that's it. Yeah, Glincher.
Yeah, Glimcher. Which is a terrible name for a company.
Hate saying Glimcher. I mean, it's named after a guy.
Yeah, Glimcher. It's funny because then the defense lawyer, when he was, cross-examining him, asked him, so you were working for a company that bought and sold airplanes. Did you catch that?
I did catch that.
And then David Rogers, which is also, by the way, classic pilot name.
Yes. Yeah, he was the other kind of like less hotshot pilot that whereas Vysotsky was that classic Southern this is your pilot speaking. Your captain speaking. I will be.
We're about to hit some turbulence. Maybe buckle your seatbelts.
This guy was more paternal.
Yes, but he corrected Ghislaine's lawyer and said, no, it was a real estate development company. And I wonder what information Ghislaine's lawyer had, because it's not like he I don't think he got it wrong, to be honest.
Yes.
Something a little funny about that. I want to say just a couple other things about David Rogers, the man, before we talk about what he said. So, Vysotsky, brown hair, brunette. David Rogers, a blondie. Little interesting duo.
Yes, absolutely.
He was very well coached. Now, I understand there was some confusion when I spoke earlier about the pilot's creed.
Yes.
And I tried to, again, explain it to Brace silently in the courthouse.
You just wrote the pilot's creed in your notebook and then tapped it a bunch with your pen.
Yeah, and made a knowing nod to you. Look,
you can't
this is
give
what you're
me,
seeing.
I am, okay. Yeah.
The
I
pilot's
would be giving
creed.
You a knowing
no,
nod
so
if
this
I
is what I'm
knew
saying.
what
Like
you were doing.
he was so precise.
Yes.
And so, like, I've been thinking about this a lot. I don't know if you've been thinking about this, but the way I've been like, oh, I wonder how I would be on the stand if I would answer questions like they do.
I'd cop a dude.
Yeah, but I'm like, I don't know if I think that I would just be like, oh yeah, that's generally correct. I'm like, I don't know if I would be like, no, you said one thing wrong, which means your entire idea is wrong.
Well, the thing is,
question.
the thing
Do you
is,
know what
with,
I mean?
the thing is with Rogers too. In sharp contrast to Vysotsky, he was really precise about some of the dates he remembered.
Well, yeah, because as it comes out later, he had reviewed that material prior with the prosecution and said, yes, I remember, because as the defense really hammered home, and we got to say, the guy that they put up again, that like jocular kind of Matt Gatesy type fellow was, I don't know, that's who he reminds me of in the way that he speaks.
Yeah, it's what Gates would want to be.
Yeah, totally. He's very, very good.
Yeah.
But it made it clear that, okay, yes, you remember after reading it, what you're remembering is based on your knowledge of what you see on this paper rather than your memory of the event actually occurring.
Yes.
If that makes sense to people at home.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's very like not lawyery, but like courtly.
Yeah, totally.
In the fact that it's like, well, you're remembering, not that you're seeing it, but it's not your actual memory that you just hold organically in your head.
Yes.
Yeah, he was, I mean, so it's from Rogers that the flight logs are produced, like many of the ones that we've seen come from David Rogers. They were subpoenaed during a civil suit, I think, first in 2009, by the plaintiffs against I believe Jeffrey Epstein.
Yes.
And then also maybe
I believe that that was in
Sarah
the Virginia
Kellen
Roberts.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
Sarah Kellen. It was with Sarah Kellen.
Yeah. So these are many of the ones that we've seen, but we did learn. And so the thing is with this is, in fact, Judge Nathan was also admonished the prosecution a little bit for over redaction, because brother, if you want to see a damn black box, you don't have to turn on Netflix
or the plane.
Is that?
That's where the black box is. You could have made the airplane connection joke because the pilot.
What's the show on Netflix?
Bird Box.
No, dude, what? That was like no, the one that's like all my British men and a cell phone.
What?
You know what I'm talking about. I
Wait,
can see
what
young
is
Chauncey
that?
trying to tell me. Black Mirror.
Oh, Wait, what was that impression?
A British person. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, you want to see some goddamn redactions. There was a lot of redactions done today, and that's I'll be real with you. Not a lot of new information came out. I mean, obviously, we've seen many of these flight logs before, but like, you can't actually see who flew on any of the flights that they displayed, because they displayed whole pages of it.
Yeah, so they displayed whole pages, and there's columns. If you guys have seen the flight logs that have been released into the public domain, what they did is where those initials were that people try to make out, and sometimes their full names, they just redacted the entire column, regardless of whether or not those names were the victims who were asking to be anonymous.
Or even Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine's names.
Well, yeah. So what the judge says is that, no, what you need to do before you like publish these into public record is you need to go back and only redact the victims' names who are requesting anonymity.
Yes.
Like Jane, right?
Exactly.
So the whole thing was annoying, but I will say there were new flight logs.
Yes.
And that's what was extremely frustrating. And this was big news. So we saw, because basically David Rogers testifies that he began working for Epstein in 1991. and I believe in July of 1991. And so that's when the flight logs begin. Now, we see for the first time that Ghislaine and Jeffrey took a flight together. And in fact, we know that because this is a specific flight that the prosecution asked about and asked him to identify the names listed that were redacted on the screen in front of us.
Yes, correct.
So, Ghislaine and Jeffrey took a flight together in July of 1991.
Yes.
This is brand new information. Up until this point, we were under the impression that Ghislaine and Jeffrey met after Robert Maxwell, her father's death, which was in November 1991.
Yes. So Robert Maxwell dies on November 5th, 1991. Shortly after, there is this Jewish society in New York City holds a memorial for him and a sort of celebration of Ghislaine's mother at the same time. From that celebration comes the very first photo that we have of Ghislaine and Jeffrey hanging out together. And so obviously they're sitting right next to each other in the photo. Like, they seem pretty chummy. Clearly they had some kind of relationship before that. And she was a New York society person. He was a rich man in New York. Obviously that we knew they knew each other, right? But her flying on the plane with him, that in July, prior to that was brand new information, and that was almost one of the most important things we found out today, really.
And it's really interesting because this is something that has been driving me crazy.
Yeah,
and we were talking about this in the hallway with our British friend, who's, I'm just gonna say, and I mean this in a positive way, a bit of a gourmand type.
Incredible guy.
Incredible. Really just we should get him on the podcast.
He had elbow pads.
He
great. Said "my dear Watson" to you.
I know, he called me Watson.
He called you Watson.
I'm more of a Sherlock than a Watson.
But he is British.
Well,
he gets
I could play
dibs.
British.
He gets dibs.
Okay, so this is what drives me crazy. We don't know how Jeffrey and Ghislaine met.
Yeah.
And I don't mean like, oh, maybe they met at a party, or like, oh, they just bumped into. It's like, no, you don't just meet someone, or like, it's not important information or something. It's just like, who cares? Oh, they just met at some. Like, no, this is crazy. We need that information. It's so central to understanding this story. How they met is absolute. Were they introduced? Who introduced them? Why? Like, Jeffrey wasn't a society. They weren't running in the same circles. He was, you know what I mean? He's a banker.
Yeah.
Like, well, how did this happen?
Well, I mean, this is, and we were talking to the British chap earlier about it. Although chap sort of implies a younger man, the gentleman that we were talking to earlier. I was sort of going on about this in the first few days of the trial. Is before he was pushed off his boat by Mossad, Robert Maxwell. I mean, very famously, especially if you're British, you know this. He ripped off all of his companies, owed
anyone
a lot of money, was a lot of fraud going on. But there's also a lot of questions about maybe he had some stashed money away, especially concerning Bulgaria. I know he had a lot of investments there.
Yeah, you've been running my ear off about Bulgaria.
Exactly. I'm going to go to Bulgaria.
It's the most anyone has ever talked about Bulgaria, ever.
Sorry that I'm a communist, Liz. But so he had a lot of money hidden away, stashed away different places because, like Epstein, the guy was a man who moved his shit around, right? Like, he moved a lot of money around. Now, this is what we were talking about with the British guy. It's like them meeting is actually, like, when she met Epstein is really important because Epstein, what was his, quote, job for Wexner besides having sex with him? It was moving money around.
Yeah, totally.
Being a money guy for him.
Creating a ton of shell companies, hiding money, moving money.
Precisely, right? And so that could be a really important sort of like thing to hone in on is this connection, right? And we know that Robert Maxwell relied on his daughter to go take care of some documents that were aboard the Lady Ghislaine. And he used her to run money to New York to his lawyer in an envelope, or really to do this insane thing with some shares in an envelope and run money back. It's complicated, but we'll get into it in another episode. it was, this is actually a pretty important link we're talking about here. This July 1991 flight was shocking to me.
Yeah. And it's interesting because the entire, I don't know, with everyone's testimony, and David Rogers even testified this to the same, it's like no one can actually pin down the nature and the exact timeline of Jeffrey and Ghislaine's relationship.
Questions put to almost everybody, and
every single person is like, what was the vibe? Is basically what everyone's trying to ascertain. What's the vibe?
It's like, you know how fellas, how after a couple days women sometimes are like, well, what are we? And I'm like, stepmother, stepson. With Jeffrey Epstein, like a lot, with the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, a lot of the questions put to witnesses. In fact, almost every witness, besides people who like maybe have never met them, like the financial directors of schools and stuff like that, has been like, what was the nature of their relationship? Because that plays a pretty important role in this, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so far, what we can gather is that like, okay, well, we found out that she might have had her own place in Palm Beach, although God knows I've never heard that before. If that's been reported on, it totally passed me by because that was news to me. But the Palm Beach house, they shared a bed.
Yes.
Like she kept her own residences, but rich people do shit like that.
That's also a very like classic Woody Allen thing, separate apartments across the park, like in the movie.
Okay, I was thinking of I thought you were making a classic Woody Allen thing. Well, there's that too.
I mean, I'm just going to leave that hanging out there. But I mean, the classic, we see each other from across the park. Whatever. What is that in Manhattan?
And I know there's also one person listening right now who the mention of Woody Allen perked up his ears, and I'm going to text you later.
But yeah, no one can really pin it down. And I have my suspicions that once the defense takes over, we're going to hear a lot more testimony trying to get exact dates and real hard facts about Ghislaine's love life.
Yes.
We heard a little bit because like we said, the Gates guy, defense lawyer Gates-esque.
Yeah.
Basically was like, isn't it true that in 2004 she was in a committed relationship with the founder of Gateway Computers?
Yes.
So we're going to hear a lot more about that, I believe.
Yes. The founder of Gateway Computers, who, by the way, she took a little yacht trip with Chelsea Clinton.
Yes.
And so that I would love for that to come out. Maybe Chelsea herself will get called to the stand.
Another perfect question for Public Question Hour.
By the way, that happened after Epstein's arrest.
Yes.
His Florida arrest. Something else that we got from the pilot. So a lot of the testimony, barring the actual, like some of the actual flight log stuff, really mirrored the questioning coming from the defense really mirrored the question that they were asking the questions that they were asking Visosky, such as like, did you see anything happening? Now, Rogers is clearly like a little more sharp and also, in my opinion, less close to Epstein than Visosky.
Visosky seemed like his boy, and Rogers doesn't.
Yeah, for instance, Visosky, like had like a little house in Zorro Ranch. Like,
yes.
He had all these cars all of Epstein's cars in his name.
Yes.
He Epstein bought him a vehicle.
Totally.
Whereas
there was much more like Dudes Rock, like dark Dudes Rock energy there.
Yeah.
And this was very much like, oh no, sir, I'm a pilot. I've taken an oath to serve with my pilot's creed, and I shall not break my pilot creed bond. Mm-hmm.
But it became clear, and actually this is sort of towards the end, but so I'll back up in a sec. But at the end of the defense's cross, they asked him the same series of questions that they asked Visosky, which is basically like, did you feel comfortable around Ghislaine? Did she ever, sort of seem like a predator? Your daughter was how old in 1994? He said 7. How old in 2004? He said 17. Says you never saw Ghislaine Maxwell do or say anything that led you to believe that Ghislaine Maxwell was like, helping Jeffrey Epstein do what he did. Mm-hmm. And then a couple other questions of that nature. And I knew what was coming next because I knew they were about to rest. And then prosecution gets up there and asks the same series of questions. And I got to say, Comey, this is the most emotive I've heard her.
Oh, yeah. She seemed like annoyed.
She seemed annoyed, but also you can tell she
like
probably...
she had a gotcha. She was real like gotcha performance.
Exactly. So, obviously, Rogers' child is the same age, especially in 2004, as some of these other children that are involved in this. And so she gets up there and she asks him, so she's re-examining David Rogers. Did you let your daughter massage Jeffrey Epstein? No. And did he ever give you $18 million? No.
I didn't like her affect with this.
No, I could tell what she was going for, and she didn't do a great job.
I don't think she stuck the landing.
No, she didn't. But for a lot of this, there was one big important thing that I mentioned in our episode about Visosky. Number one is that minor victim number one, Jane, right? Jane has the same first name as one of Epstein's girls. And by girls, I mean one of the women that actually really worked for him and was part of his crew, rather than somebody that kind of came and he exploited somebody. This woman's case is a pretty sad one, to be totally honest with you. I think in many ways she's different than a lot of the other girls that are involved in this. The rumor is that Epstein, I would say likely through Brunel, purchased her from, just to give as few identifying details as possible, from a, let's say, Eastern European, although not really, country, at a very young age. And then, she was sort of part of his retinue. She's described in some of the abuse, I believe by Carolyn, I think, was described having an encounter with this woman. So she has the same first name as Jane. Now, as I was saying, during the flight logs portion, or during questioning over the flight logs with Visosky, Jane's first name, her real first name, is listed in the flight logs only as her first name. Now, the dates actually match up in the first batch of them to the dates that Jane, the victim, said she was on the plane. However, because it's her first name, defense gets up there and they're like, well, isn't it true that Epstein had an assistant with that same name? Visosky says yes. And it's like, well, isn't it true that's just her first name? Did you see Jane, the victim, get on the flight? So sort of the implication there, I mean, obviously this doesn't hold up under scrutiny, but they're trying to at least put a little bit of gum in the works for the jury to have just the slightest bit of doubt there. Yeah. Right?
That it could just be a girl with another name.
Now,
like the one that worked for him.
Exactly. Now, I was screaming internally because the dates on this couldn't be more fucking different. Jane, minor victim number one, what she's talking about happened in the mid-early 1990s. Jane number two, the Jane that worked for Epstein, doesn't come into the picture until the 2000s. Yeah. Now, for the life of me, I still do not understand why during Recross, because they did Recross examine Visosky, like I just mentioned, that the prosecution did not ask him when he first met Jane number two. Or isn't it true that Jane number two only started working for Epstein around these dates? However you want to phrase it. But literally their birthdays it doesn't make sense. The girl would have been too young to be in, it doesn't make any sense. However, when the defense was basically trying to pull the same trick again today, couldn't it be either girl? Rogers actually comes out and says, no, I didn't meet Jane number two until the 2000s. And in fact, he gave I believe it was September 2004. Yeah. He said he gave the month. And of course, our Gates guy, kind of rolls out.
He recovered very quickly. He's a smooth operator.
But that was major, and
finally someone got it,
and finally the prosecution also brought that up during Recross too, which I was again baffled that didn't come up the first time because it's so glaringly obvious that that's the case.
Yeah, a couple other things the defense was good at asking him about though was. So yesterday, I don't know if we mentioned this when we were talking about Carolyn's testimony yesterday. Yeah. But a detail that she mentioned was that she saw a photo of Ghislaine on Jeffrey's wall where she was pregnant.
Yes.
Now, look, we don't have any knowledge about this. To our knowledge, there's never been any evidence that Ghislaine was pregnant during this time. And in fact, I believe it was Virginia Roberts who spoke about how Jeffrey and Ghislaine wanted her to carry a baby for them.
Yes.
So I don't really know what's going on there. And unfortunately, I think the defense is really going to pounce on it. Today, they showed Rogers, our pilot, David Rogers, a photo that we couldn't see that has been redacted. But I assume it was already in evidence. So I believe it's one of the photos that was shown to the jury that was taken from the Palm Beach mansion.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, have you ever seen this woman? And this is after a series of questions about who the woman I believe the woman in the photo is, which I'll get to in a second. And he kind of goes, oh, I've never seen her like that, which is, funny. And he says, oh, you can see she's pregnant there, correct?
Yes.
And so this is what I'm thinking. They're showing him a nude photo that was found on the wall of a woman who's pregnant. I believe, due to the line of questioning, that photo isn't Ghislaine, but is in fact Eva Dubin.
Mm-hmm.
Now, because previous to this, he's asking them about the Dubins. They appear in the flight logs a lot, both Eva and Glenn.
Yes.
Eva, of course, was Jeffrey's boyfriend. We've talked about in like the 80s when she was Eva Anderson. Then she marries Glenn Dubin. Jeffrey is Selena Dubin's godfather. Okay. This then got the old brain, moving. I don't know. Moving and grooving?
I mean, it probably shakes around in there a little bit.
Yeah, it wiggles like in like a jar.
That's why people shake babies, to make them smarter.
Yeah, like it's like, when you like go like this to Jell-O mold and it kind of like wiggles.
They can't see you. But
like,
you poke a Jell-O mold. I've never done that, but I appreciate that can be done.
Yes. Anyway, I'm wondering, who are the defense witnesses they're going to bring up?
Okay, so...
You don't think the Dubins will testify?
I can't imagine.
I mean, they could be subpoenaed and testify.
I mean, I can't imagine defense are going to bring up the Dubins. Maybe.
That would be crazy.
That would be psycho. I mean,
not good for the Dubins' social standing
we've
either.
Still got, again, there's estimated 1 day left of prosecution. They said maybe it will go into Friday, but that's only if something takes insane amount of time.
Yeah.
And so we maybe it will go into Friday.
I feel like it will in the morning, but then it'll wrap up early.
We still have Annie Farmer to go. And Liz was saying Sarah Kellen, maybe.
Possibly. But I don't think so if they're wrapping up.
Exactly.
That's the thing that's so crazy too, is that basically, when the prosecution announced that they were ready to close this week, everyone was shocked. The defense was like, wait, what? And everyone in our room, of course, was like, what? And even Allison Nathan seemed a little like, huh? And so it seems as if, they've shaved, apparently, a ton off of their witness list and have, surprisingly so, it seems as the trial has gone on.
Yeah.
That seems a little concerning to me, but I'm no daughter of former FBI director. What's his first name?
James
Comey.
I
just forgot it. James Comey.
Liz, you're a current FBI special agent.
Shh.
Okay. We can be. Come on.
So, but I'm just like,
we work for the government. Yeah.
So it doesn't seem like there's a ton more witnesses that the prosecution is calling. They're wrapping up this week. The defense will be starting next Thursday.
Yes.
And I'm very curious to see who they're going to call, and if anyone, look, we're talking character witnesses. Mm-hmm. If Ghislaine isn't taking the stand herself, which again, I think that's still on the table. We're definitely getting people testifying about her, generally, how great and how charming she is, which is brought up today.
Yeah.
Great personality, they keep saying, which is...
I don't know what that could be. I'm expecting nothing and I have no visitors.
Oh my God.
Liz.
That just scared me so much.
Fetch the Beretta.
It also seems as if, I'm assuming that this is also going to happen, we will be hearing from Mark Epstein, Jeffrey's brother.
Yes.
The defense seems to be laying that out, saying, who's Mark Epstein? Kind of throwing his name out there.
Yeah.
My only suspicion about them calling the Dubins is because like basically neither the prosecution or the defense are just like throwing out things if they're not going to try to like recall them later in a sense. Like they're trying to, you know, put stuff out there for the jury so the jury can be like, oh yeah, I remember that name. Oh yeah, you said that before and in this context.
Yeah.
Okay, you're not just introducing some brand new thing that I have no understanding of.
Yeah. They got to lay the damn foundation.
Yes. Both legally and narratively. So it seems like Mark Epstein will be called. I would not be shocked to see the Dubins. But yeah, I'm very curious. Perhaps Vicky Ward herself shall take the stand in Ghislaine's
she would love that.
honor.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, we're going to hear, I think today was just the first of many ex-boyfriends or ex-boyfriend type people that we're going to hear from.
Yeah. Oh, and then of course there's all
Loftus,
all the witnesses that will be coming to dismantle the girl's testimony.
Yeah. So prepare, if the trial has made you mad so far.
Oh man.
Think of it this way. The prosecution has been calling the witnesses so far, and that is going to change as of next week.
Yes.
Well, all right. You remember how I guess I actually didn't do that on this show. I talked about this on Chapo, but anyways, the Reddit thing.
It's all blurring together.
So we've talked a lot the past few days. Okay, the Ghislaine Maxwell Reddit mod thing is, there's no other way I can describe it other than Reddit tier. But
are we talking tiers?
Well,
by the way, oh my god, update on the tier system.
Rewind. David
Rogers said, and I looked at you, he said Ghislaine is Jeffrey's number 2. Now, you said that means that she's the top employee, but she's number 2.
I never said that Ghislaine was not Jeffrey Epstein's number 2. Let me explain this to you as carefully
B tier, number 2, the second letter.
Let me explain this to you as calmly and gently as I can. Jeffrey Epstein is not an employee of Jeffrey Epstein.
Technically, yes, he is, because he's both an owner and an employee for tax purposes.
Epstein, in the terms, Jeffrey Epstein is not an employee in the general. Okay, maybe he technically is for tax purposes.
Well, then that means legally, then yes, he is.
Jeffrey Epstein
corporations
is the owner.
And the way that things are laid out.
She is the number 2 to Jeffrey Epstein. She is Jeffrey Epstein's number 2 in this sort of hierarchy here of who can order stuff. However,
in letter format,
in tiers of employees of Jeffrey Epstein, she is in the ultimate tier. There is no tier above her because there are no employees of Jeffrey Epstein who outrank her. Jeffrey Epstein is not an employee of Jeffrey Epstein.
Who's the boss?
Jeffrey Epstein is the boss.
So that's A. The boss is the top.
No. He's not an employee there. I'm saying she is his number 2 in that colloquial, whatever, how you pronounce it, sense. But she's second. She's not second tier there. She's just his number 2 because a number 2 is different than second tier. She's second tier in. She's first. Oh my god! All right, moving on.
I win.
Moving on. If the fucking theory that Ghislaine Maxwell was a Reddit mod.
Oh yes, this thing.
First of all,
yes, Brace really hates this.
I get that it has a lot of bullet points, and bullet points are like confusing to people because they think that must contain some sort of. It's like, why? Well, how can you shoot a bullet without any propellant?
Well, and it's bolded usually.
Some parts are bolded. That really confuses people because they're like, well, that means that part's extra true. Literally no proof of it, and it's not congruent with her personality. The most attractive part of it is it stopped posting the day she got arrested.
Well, we do know she's a PC girl, so true. It does go in line there.
But in terms of actually aligning with what we know her real interests to be, and really with her schedule and the way that she actually operated in this world, not congruent whatsoever. Granted, Ghislaine was an early adopter of technology. She did teach her father how to use the earliest computers that her family got. However, there's no actual indication that Ghislaine Maxwell was this insane Reddit user. Now, that is not to say that mod is not a pedophile. In fact, I will go so far as to say that him being a Reddit mod almost assures us of that fact. But there's absolutely no proof Ghislaine is behind it. Leading me in to the second thing. I don't give a fuck. And by the way, if you're listening for trial news, we've done the trial. We're gavelled out of that. Now we're into the leather jacket on, cig in the mouth, rant zone.
Welcome to the rant zone.
I don't give a fuck that fake ass Maxwell trial tracker account got suspended because it was just some guy who bought 300, 400, 500,000 bot
I think it's a girl,
followers.
actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Ugh.
Because someone sent me the Instagram account, but I didn't look at it, but it looked like a girl's name.
Anyways, people were like, "Oh, God, look, the Twitter's suspending them for truth." It was just like, they were just like, here's what they were doing. And listen, as a classic scam artist, I was immediately spotted this. They are doing this, like, they're buying a bunch of bots so that when you see the account, you're like, damn, people follow this. I'm going to follow it too. They are linking to their Substack, which is just like literally copy pasting information that other people wrote. Like in some case, like literally like the Reddit shit. Like it's like not them doing it. They're saying they're the trial tracker. They're not at the fucking trial. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to get you to subscribe to the Substack, and then they're going to try to sell you a paid subscription. Now, I was correct about that because their account got suspended, which, as they say on their other Substack, literally for buying bots. They said for manipulation, that's what that is.
Yeah.
And now they're trying to say that, oh, well, if you really want the truth, you can't get it from me on Twitter because I'll get suspended because they don't want you to find out the truth. You should, for just literally, they say this, for the price of 1 cup of coffee a month, you can subscribe to my Substack and get it.
The thing that really annoys me, okay, first of all, I didn't look at it that much. I don't think I even followed it. I don't know. But it was like tweeting out a bunch of stuff that was fake. One.
Yeah.
And getting people mad about stuff that wasn't happening. Like, shit about how the trial was not, was going to be canceled the day before or something.
Yeah, they said
fake.
the trial was ending tomorrow, which is like...
That's wrong.
That's just not true.
And it makes me mad because I don't know, a lot of people were following it, not just bots.
Yeah.
But a lot of people were following it. And then, they're like, oh, how else do we get updates? It's like, dude, that's not, now I sound like a crazy person being like fake news, but it just really bothers me. But then, I can just like ignore that, to be honest.
Yeah,
I'm just like, whatever.
I don't follow
give a
anybody,
fuck.
so I don't see what they say.
There's so many of those accounts, not Epstein specific, but it's like, whatever, fine, okay. But then it's the fucking like content people. I'm not going to name names because I don't know why, but like streamers, YouTubers, bloggers, podcasters, whatever, fucking quote tweeting or like putting a picture up that's like, oh, it got banned. And they're just like, the Twitter account that was following the Epstein case was banned by Twitter. Boom, mic drop. And they're just like, boom. And it's like, no, dude, you're just, first of all, you're fucking lying. You're lying by omission because you're fucking saying that it got banned because it was like too close to the truth or whatever. And it's like, that's not what happened.
Yeah.
That's not what happened. And you have plausible deniability because I'm not saying anything. I'm just throwing it out there. What happened? You make your own fucking... Fuck you.
Yeah.
Fuck you. Yeah. And you're doing it so that you have something stupid to fucking talk about on your YouTube show.
And get some fucking retweets. Yeah.
And get retweets and get your clout or whatever. And it's like, I see you. And then you get these assholes like Eric fucking Weinstein, who was doing the same thing. When it's like...
the worst Weinstein brother.
I hate this guy. I hate all of those. I call it, they're like confusionists.
Yeah.
And they come in and they say like, oh, look, I'm just a guy who cares about, everything being fair and honest. But it's like, dude, you fucking knew Epstein.
Yeah. Like, very few people met Epstein that like I have ever interacted with. I've never interacted with Eric Weinstein online, but like, it's like that fucking Jenny Jardin shit. It's like, sorry, dog, if you're part of this, no, you can't like.
But it's like, they're just like, oh, like try to sell themselves as their own truth tellers. And it's like, you're selling snake oil like the rest of them. Maybe I don't know, whatever. I fucking hate these people. Boom, mic drop.
Yeah.
No, that's not what happened. You're such a fucking loser.
Yeah.
You're such a fucking loser.
Anyways, they're all liars and sharks. and not
Except
the
for
kinds,
me and
except
you.
for Liz. Well, no, there are people like Marlon's following it. You know what I mean? And he's writing about it. There's a ton of, the thing is, there's a ton of people who are writing about the trial.
Yeah.
But
also like mainstream news is writing about it too.
Yeah.
So
like it is
I
actually,
literally see them.
It is actually big news. The thing is, the facts can get out there. Right? Like it's not a hidden thing that like Bill Clinton was on the Lolita Express and none of this is like really like all those names are out there. People have access to them. They've been reported on. It's the analysis that you really do with a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
And the digging into the actual connections between these people and what those connections might mean. Because you can't, like, I'm not, being one of those, like, you actually can't say that in whatever mainstream outlet if you really want to.
It's true.
Or even if you really wanted to. Like, you can't. That's just not how that works.
Yeah. You also can't talk about the chef problems at Café Lorenzo.
No, you can't. You can't. And like it's well, actually Café Lorenzo is pretty heavily featured on eater.com, which is owned, of course, by yours truly. But yeah, I mean that's the thing. And so it's like any of these fucking there's a lot of people and you gotta watch out for them. A lot of people who whenever they see anything like this, they're just juicing for some retweets. And you can smell them from a mile away. I mean, especially if you got a big Jew nose like me. A lot of sharks and charlatans out there.
Yeah.
Jussie Watch, though. I want to be, we're just talking
little
now.
Update.
Yeah, Jussie
We
Watch.
haven't talked all day.
I know, so much has happened. Jussie took the stand again.
Yes, by the way, some great courtroom sketches of Jussie.
Jussie took the stand again.
You almost did that in gourmand voice.
Jussie took a stand again.
I don't like Jussie and gourmand voice.
Juicy.
Oh my god.
Like a nice plump bird. But Jussie took the stand again and admonished the prosecutor for using the N-word too much. And he's still proclaiming his innocence so hard.
Yeah.
He was saying that I think he couldn't get on stage with Alicia Keys after his attack happened because he didn't want to be seen as a guy who got attacked. And yes, I know. The courtroom was in tears. We also... Liz and I and Young Chomsky especially have co-signed the BLM statement that was put out in support of Jussie. We are, again, I should mention, we are founding members and technically co-presidents of journalists.
President and employees.
Of Journalists for Jussie. We are journalists for Jussie. So,
but we're not journalists.
Well, we are for Jussie.
But we're not journalists.
Yeah, but when
in name only.
And when we're talking about him, we are. So, because that's all just true that he didn't do it. In fact, it was MAGA people. Anyways, let's wrap this shit up. We got to. My name is Brace. So all right. Before we get to Young Chomsky, when I stalk the deserts.
Oh my god.
When I walk the deserts. Australian outback, and I see those large dinosaur bones sticking out of the sand. Are you familiar with that, Elizabeth? Large dinosaur ribs, perhaps, jutting out of the sand, creating little rivulets of shade? Well, I am. People think those are dinosaurs, but no. Those are just genetically modified lizards that I've created and set loose to plumpen them up before I attack them with my chosen weapons. The fork, the other fork, and the knife. And of course, how could I forget my suit of armor? The large white napkin tucked into my breast, covering my bosom like a handsome little bra. And the podcast is produced by Young Chomsky. We are TrueAnon. We will see you tomorrow. Wait, did I just do your thing?
Oh my god. Bye-bye.
Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein.